Okay, welcome all to the joint webinar with our world business partner, Intervistas. Today's webinar, we have the pleasure to count with our speakers, Doris Mack, Vice President at Intervistas, Selena Estrella, Senior Manager, and Marcelo Garcia, Senior Director at Intervistas. Before we start the webinar, we would like to share with you that, as usual, we have simultaneous interpretation. You could select Spanish or English in the Zoom menu. Besides, if you don't want to hear the original audio, please click on mute original audio. As you can recall from other webinars, the chat function is disabled, and in case you want to ask any questions to the speakers, you will have to send us to this email, info@aci-lac.aero. The Q&A session will take place at the end of both presentations. Now I will give the floor to Marcelo Garcia.
Gracias, Carla. Estimados colegas y amigos de la industria, buenos días. Bienvenidos a nuestro cuarto webinar intitulado Estudios de Impacto Económico, el arte de impulsar políticas gubernamentales y decisiones de inversión. Pensamos que es un tema muy apropiado para tiempos de relance económico de nuestra industria, pero también muy relevante para el desarrollo económico regional en América Latina y el Caribe. Nosotros en Intervistas llevamos más de 20 años perfeccionando la metodología y el análisis con respecto a los estudios de impacto. Nuestros clientes han incluido Boeing, IATA, Airports Council International, el Duty Free World Council y un sinnúmero de aeropuertos y municipalidades. Los temas que queremos compartir con ustedes esta mañana se articulan alrededor de 3 ideas principalmente. Primero, ¿cómo pueden ustedes adaptar los estudios a sus necesidades corporativas y comerciales? ¿Cómo comunicar los resultados a su audiencia e influenciar el proceso de toma de decisiones, ya sea a nivel interno o con actores externos? Y también, ¿cómo maximizar el impacto de estos estudios en su comunidad y con los principales actores económicos de su región? Mis colegas Doris Mack, que es vicepresidente y líder del Grupo de Estudios Económicos, y Selena Estrella, gerente principal, también miembro de este equipo, se han preparado una presentación sobre el tema esta mañana y les podrán explicar con más detalle la utilidad de estos estudios para sus aeropuertos y responder a sus preguntas. Muchas gracias y que disfruten nuestra presentación. Ahora le doy la palabra a mi colega Doris.
Thank you so much, Marcelo, and thank you to Carla and ACI for allowing us the opportunity to speak to you today about economic impact. And unfortunately, our colleague Catherine Tooley is not available today, but Selena and I will guide you through this presentation. Carla, next slide, please. So for the webinar today, we'll be looking at 2 different areas of overview, and we'll speak about each of these aspects of economic impact, and hopefully it will allow you to just understand a little bit more how economic impact is used and how it could benefit your airport and community as well. So we're going to be looking at 2 different aspects, the first of which is air transportation and the connection with local economic development. There's been a lot of research in the past that looks at the connectivity, air connectivity, and how that impacts and affects local economic development. We understand that air services support trade, foreign direct investment, education, and also supports productivity in other industries as well beyond air transportation. In the second part of the this webinar, we'll also talk about how to measure and communicate your airport's economic impact. Selena will walk you through the methodology and some aspects there and things to look for and to assess in such a study. I will then guide you through a discussion in the different types of economic impact analyses that InterVistas has conducted, but also other types of work that is available as well, from macro level studies to micro studies as well, just depending on the situation and the question that might need to be answered. There are different types of analyses to tailor to that. And then lastly, I think the part that might be most interesting is how to tell the story. Economic impact can be quite quantitative and technical in nature, but we've found ways to help to convey those technical results in a very user-friendly and easy to understand method. So we will demonstrate with you some of the different types of ways that the results are conveyed, and hope you enjoy that. So at this point in time, I'm going to pass things over to Selena. Thank you.
Thank you, Doris. Buenos dias. Next slide, please, Carla. So as Doris mentioned, we will start by talking about how air transportation is vital in the local economy and for economic development. Next slide, please. So airports contribute significantly to local and national economies. They facilitate economic development within communities by attracting businesses, creating employment opportunities, and paying wages, which in turn are spent in local communities and further drive economic activity. One study has shown that for every 1,000 departing seats, there were 5 associated jobs in the area. This generally means that the addition of a daily departure with a 100-seat aircraft, so that's about 36,500 seats annually, would support about 182 jobs. Airports also facilitate services to businesses and personal travelers by providing passenger transportation and rapid long-distance cargo movement. So for businesses, both passenger and cargo transportation services are used to facilitate production or sales. For example, a company may acquire an electronic component that is part of a larger product, and then after production, that product may be sent by air to a customer. And for personal travel, commercial aviation is consumed by households for leisure. So air service is relied upon by other sectors of the economy, and a wide range of industries use air transportation to support their operations. Recent research has also found stronger evidence that links air service and certain industry sectors, including professional, scientific, and technical fields, finance, corporate management and headquarters, information technology, advanced manufacturing businesses, and many more that generate demand for either air cargo service or have corporate travel requirements related to managing a more globalized supply chain. Next slide, please. So airports support long-term economic growth by providing linkages between a region and the national economy through greater connections to business markets and greater access to resources. So industries and activities that would otherwise not exist in a region can be attracted by improved air transport connectivity. This can occur when more capacity is provided to a given destination, either through additional flights or a larger aircraft, or the number of non-stop destinations increases at an airport. This connectivity is critical to businesses. It allows businesses to access both customers and suppliers from outside of the immediate area. And increasing connectivity broadens the number of consumers that a business can reach. So with more business comes more activity and in turn more employment. As a result, aviation yields additional benefits to direct users and generates further positive impact on performance and economic activity of a region. A number of these mechanisms include tourism effects. Air service facilitates the arrival of a large number of tourists to a region or a country. And this includes business as well as leisure tourists. The spending of these tourists support a wider range of tourism-related businesses. You have hotels, other accommodations providers, restaurants, retail, attractions, car rentals, etc. So another way that aviation helps in the economy and strengthens the economy is through trade effects. Air transport provides connections to export markets for both goods and services. And another key factor that many companies consider when making decisions about local offices, manufacturing plants, or maybe warehouses is the proximity of an international airport. So there's investment effects as well. And last but not least, aviation can lead to enhanced productivity. So air transportation offers access to new markets, which in turn enables businesses to achieve greater economies of scale. Air access also enables companies to attract and retain high-quality employees. So it should be noted that connectivity enabled by airports is not sufficient on its own to fully support economy. We understand that economies are far more complex than that. I mean, it clearly takes a wide range of players acting together to generate economic growth. You need support from government, their businesses, infrastructure providers, the residents. So for example, providing air connectivity alone does not guarantee large volumes of tourists. There needs to be hotels, restaurants, retail, entertainment to make the destination an attractive tourism destination. But nevertheless, without convenient air services, a destination will find it more difficult to attract tourists. So as such, air connectivity is a necessary element of economic growth and development. Next slide, please. So as Doris mentioned, we will talk about, how to measure that economic footprint of your airport and how to communicate this with the broader audience. Next slide, please. So economic impact studies, what are they? We know that airports are significant economic generators to the local economy, the country, and beyond. With airlines and airports, the major drivers of economic impact are aircraft operations and passenger traffic. Even people who fly all the time, those we call the road warriors, they underestimate the total amount of employment involved with making airports and airlines work like they do. So an economic impact analysis represents a careful estimation of that activity. When people think of airlines, what comes to mind usually are aircraft itself. But it's the people who make commercial aviation a reality, and all the people whose jobs rely one way or another on airports and airlines. So economic impact can be measured in various ways. And the four common measures used are employment, wages, gross domestic product or GDP, and economic output. Next slide, please. Businesses create additional economic activity across different sectors, causing a rippling effect in the economy. As you'll see, the four major components of economic impact are direct, indirect, induced, and finally, catalytic and visitor spending impacts. These distinctions are used as a base for the estimation of total economic impact of airports. For the direct impacts, this includes ticket agents, your gate agents, flight crew, airline maintenance, airport security, concessions, wheelchair assistance, ground handling, and so many more. The indirect impacts are the supplier industries, such as food wholesalers that supply the airline's snacks and all the restaurants at the airport. It includes aviation fuel providers, IT suppliers, and others as well. Induced impacts are included as well in the economic impact of an airport. And induced impacts arise from employees' spending of their wages, whether it's groceries, restaurants, car repair, home remodeling. It's that household spending that's in the greater economy. And finally, there's catalytic impacts, which includes visitor spending impacts. So as I mentioned, tourism supports activity in the hospitality sector, restaurants, ground transportation, retail, so all those souvenirs that people buy and the reminders of their trip, and recreation, and which in Latin America is famous for and all throughout the year. So impacts and productivity improvements as well are accounted. Some of those that I spoke about earlier, this is enhancements in trade and investment. And so next slide, please, Carla, and I will be passing it on to Doris to share more about the role of communicating these studies.
Thank you so much, Selena, for that overview. So in this particular, this remaining part of the presentation, we'll be talking about really just how to communicate airport contributions and how to utilize the economic impact analysis as well. So economic impact studies demonstrate the role and importance of airports and air service to the broader economy. Selena has discussed a number of those aspects in terms of connectivity and the different types of jobs that arise in the airport setting. These types of studies, when they're carried out correctly and properly, they are a very important tool in terms of quantifying and communicating the importance of the role of the aviation aspects as well, and how it also connects to the rest of the economy and society. These particular studies are also important part of strategic advocacy initiatives, and it is important in terms of conveying the role and importance of an airport to government. We've also experienced with some airport clients where the economic impact information has also been utilized for funding applications and other infrastructure development needs as well. So it's a very multifaceted type of information that can be used in a number of different areas. In terms of gaining a better understanding between air services and economic development, airport officials and regional economic development interests, they can assist each other in terms of contributing to the region's overall economic development and jointly broadcasting and communicating those impacts to government stakeholders, but also to the general public as well. So one thing that we're very careful about in terms of conducting these studies is that oftentimes, the results that come out, may be perceived as being overinflated or they're not believable. But we do believe that part of that is with respect to the methodology and the approach that we use to conduct that. So in terms of the information and just the effective guidelines in terms of how to contribute and communicate this information, is really recognizing the audience, I think, is the first point, and just understanding who's receiving this information? Is it the public? Is it government? Are there other stakeholders? Is it investment, investment bankers, etc.? It really depends on who that audience is, and to tailor and develop the results to that audience. A lot of the supplemental information that is also provided in these types of reports, also include some background information on the airport, and just providing the context for what the economic impact is measuring. Really, when we talk about that, is like the boundaries of the studies. Is it just airport operations? Are we including any other transportation linkages, things like that, that can be decided upon and discussed as well. In terms of how to convey the information, we have different, I had mentioned earlier that the economic impact studies themselves are quite technical in nature, but at the same time, we have found ways to, to be able to convey the information in an easy to understand terms. And so in the following slides, I'll walk you through the different types of reports and ways in which the information can be conveyed. Next slide, please. So in terms of communicating, the airport's contribution, on this particular slide, we have two different two samples of how the information can be conveyed. And the first is a white paper report with an executive summary. So you can think about this as the traditional technical report. There's a full details in terms of the methodology and approach. It provides a lot of further details on the results themselves. And this type of report is, it's good for people who want to delve deeper into the results themselves, but it is a good accompanying piece of information to allow just further review and whatnot. We've also found that for some clients, the technical report has actually served other purposes in addition to the original use of it. And as an example, we've recently conducted some studies for a client where they needed the information for an environmental hearing. So they needed a lot of information that actually preceded the analysis themselves. So depending on the forum in which the information is being used, the level of detail can be conveyed further. But for the most part, we find that the executive summary is probably, for the broad brush audience, might be the best, as it is a very compact and easy to read document. And this is appropriate for ministerial, C-suite level executives and also the media, as the executive summary provides a very focused review of the results themselves. So, there are some airport clients decide, whether or not they would like just an executive summary, or they would like a white paper as well. So, next slide, please. On this particular, in terms of accompanying the longer white paper, there are other aspects in terms of communicating the economic impact results as well. And the first that we have here is an infographic or video graphics. This is, most people have been familiar, I think, in viewing these. They're very visual, and they're high impact analyses as well, easy to understand, and really at a glance you can see very quickly what the results look like. And we'll have an example of some of those that follow. In terms of the website, some airport clients may decide to have a dedicated website just for the economic impact results themselves. But oftentimes what we've seen is that the materials, whether it's an infographic or the executive summary or even the full report, airport clients generally have a spot on their website to be able to share the information a little bit more broadly as well. Excuse me there. And then lastly, the press release. So sometimes there may be a desire for a full campaign, and when the study is completed and released, a media release is conveyed much broadly, which oftentimes then relates back to where information is on the website, and to be able to convey that. The press release itself allows the airport to develop the messaging around its economic impact and to be able to convey that much more broadly. We've found that a number of the usefulness of economic impact is that this type of analyses can be developed and conveyed and updated every few years. So if there is a trend in the analysis, the airport is able to talk about that, and in relation to other airport developments as well. Next slide, please. So in this, over the next couple slides, I'm going to be actually just talking a little bit more about a couple of examples and sample projects that are in the public domain that InterVistas has completed in the past. And this first one here is a study on the economic impact of European airports. This particular piece of work was commissioned by ACI Europe back in 2015, and as part of this engagement, there was, aside from the longer white paper style technical report, there was also a online calculator that was developed as well. So for ACI Europe, the importance for them to commission this study was to allow the association to convey really the economic benefits and footprint of the European airports. But at the same time, it also allowed the individual airports to be able to be focused on and also convey publicly what their economic impact is as well. With respect to the online calculator aspect, this was actually it was interesting to be able to develop this and to provide this to individual airports. The role here was to allow airports to estimate and sort of kind of relate their economic impact to potentially different passenger and cargo levels. So, for example, they could take a look at in like future forecasts, for example, to see what if their passenger levels increase by 10%, what would that mean to the economic impact? So that was more for internal to the member airports themselves, so it wasn't publicly available, but it allowed that supplemental type of analyses and to be able to forward plan a little bit as well. So it was twofold. The study was very outward facing to the general public, but then there were also aspects that were allowed for member airports as well. I'll also just briefly mention some of the similar work that we have completed for the Canadian Airports Council. So the Canadian Airports Council also looked at the economic impact of airports in Canada and the general role as well. And really the idea was to be able to convey to the general public and also to government the role of aviation and specifically, airport-related employment across Canada. That study was conducted in 2017, and what we found, though, is that with the pandemic, especially in early 2020, when aviation was was being locked down and travel was being restricted, our clients actually utilized some of this information that was prepared for them previously to be able to convey the importance of the sector to government. So again, that sort of demonstrates what the the different type and ways that the information can be used. Next slide, please. So on this particular slide, and I'll ask Carla to click play very soon, but this is a study that we had conducted for Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport in 2017. So we conducted a fairly large-scale macro study for the airport, and this was a repeat study that we had conducted for the airport a few years prior as well. But here's an example of actually how to convey the economic impact results in a video format. Please click play, Carla. Thank you.
MSP International Airport, creating momentum for economic growth. MSP Airport connects Minnesota to destinations around the world while generating billions of dollars for the Twin Cities economy. Included in this number are the wages and salaries of thousands of workers who support the economy when they spend money on housing, food, education, and more. Millions of visitors also arrive through MSP every year. While here, they spend money on things like restaurants, shops, lodging, and good old-fashioned Minnesota fun. MSP generates nearly $1 billion for government programs, yet is funded by rents and fees paid by airlines, airport vendors, and other users of the airport, not by income or property taxes. MSP Airport, helping Minnesota thrive. MSP.
Thanks, Carla. So on that particular video, you can see, a creative way in terms of how the airport has decided to convey their economic impact results. And the results that were shown and talked about in the video were actually a macro impact. So this sort of leads into the next few slides for this presentation, where we're going to talk about the different types of analyses. So the macro impacts are really looking at, from an airport perspective, the overall economic impact of ongoing operations at the airport. So when we're talking about, all of the different job types that Selena had talked about earlier in the presentation, when we're looking at the airlines, we're looking at the concessionaires, we're looking at the security personnel, the airport management team, and so on and so forth. So all of those different components kind of come together and convey the macro economic impact. Some previous examples of the work, and I've discussed two of them already, the work for the Canadian Airports Council and then also for ACI Europe. But as an example, we had also conducted some work specifically for Curacao Airport previously as well. So you can see from the different types of entities, you can look at the impacts from different perspectives. But when we're holistically at the macro level, this is it sort of provides that high level broad brush, and we find that airports utilize and convey this type of information quite often, and in for example, in just press releases in general, just to include that that type of information at the end of that describes the airport operations, just as a reminder, to the public, to the government, and so on and so forth, about the economic footprint and the role of the airport more broadly. Next slide, please. Oh, I think there was a slide. Go back one slide, please. Sorry. Carla, could you go? Yes, thank you. So we've got the micro impacts after describing the macro impacts, again, large scale. But for micro impacts here, we are focusing on the economic contributions of, as an example, a particular single flight. Could be a passenger flight or a cargo flight, and it could also be, whether it's a domestic or international service. And the role and of this particular analysis is actually quite useful. When an airport wants to focus in on, well, what does one flight bring to the community, as an example. We've done a number of analyses for clients in the US in this regard. So for example, Denver International Airport, whenever they announce a new flight publicly to the media, but then just broadly, what they include is they announce the flight, but then they also include some results regarding what the potential economic impact of that single flight could mean to the Denver economy, for example. So, with respect to airport jobs that may occur, but then as well, Selena had talked quite in-depthly about the visitor spending aspects. And so together, it provides a holistic view in terms of jobs and job creation for at the airport, but then also with respect to visitor spending, and that type of information is quite interesting to the public and other sectors of the economy, because there are jobs that are occurring in other places, such as industry sectors, such as accommodations and food and beverage and retail and ground transportation and whatnot. All of those different areas that Selena had talked about earlier as well. So in terms of some of the examples of our previous work that we've done for micro impacts, we did some work for Melbourne Airport in Australia a number of years ago. They were looking at some new developments, some new infrastructure developments, and with respect to that, they were needing to get some public funding and government funding. And this particular piece of work actually helped support that. We did some work for Frontier Airlines at Denver, and actually more recently as well, conducted a similar study for Southwest Airlines at Denver Airport as well. And part of the reason for that was to convey publicly the longevity of the services for each of those airlines in the community, but it was also matched with an anniversary in the case of Southwest Airlines operations at Denver Airport for a number of years. So it was really a celebration, but then again, it was an opportunity to be able to convey the importance of the operations for the airline locally, because there was a lot of employment that occurred there as well. And then lastly, we did some work for the Civil Aviation Authority in Singapore, and the authority there was interested in actually understanding what the economic impact of full service carriers versus low-cost carriers, for example. So we were able to convey and cut the data in different ways to be able to show the impacts differently there. Next slide, please. And then I guess lastly, Selena had spoken quite in-depthly about the wider economic benefits and the catalytic impacts, and really in terms of how aviation and the air connectivity is able to facilitate and develop other industries in an economy. And some examples of the work that we have here are, with respect to the value of air transport in Asia Pacific, for example. That was a study that was done for IATA. We looked at the current value, but then also looking at the much broader economic catalytic effects, and then also looked at from a future perspective as well. We conducted a large-scale air liberalization study, economic impact of air liberalization for Boeing and other partners in in 2016. So that was really looking at what if air liberalization was further progressed, what would that mean from an economic impact perspective, not only in the the aviation space on the ground in the airport industry itself, but then beyond as well, just for the with respect to air connectivity. And then lastly, we've recently conducted a study for the intra-African air connectivity aspects as well with IATA and other partner firms and associations. So really looking at if air connectivity in Africa was improved or increased, what would that look like, again, for job creation, and how would that further support economic development in the African nation. And next slide, please. And I think what we'll do here is I will just leave you with this one last slide. On your, if you wish, you can click on those links that we have posted here, and you can gain and see further details on the different types of studies that we've conducted. We're able to, I think, through these studies, you can see the different types of reports that are available, and also the different subject matter areas, like that, for example, the first one on duty-free and travel retail in the Americas. That particular piece of work was conducted for the Duty-Free World Council, and really looking at one micro area of travel, retail, and duty-free. And then there are other interactive reports as well that we've made available. For example, for the economic impact of Winnipeg Airport, we have an interactive display of the results in that regard. So I guess thank you so much for your time, and we are happy to take any questions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Doris. Now I would like to introduce Rafael Echevarne, Director General at ACI-LAC, for a few words before we start the Q&A session.
Yes, thank you very much, Carla. And thank you very much, Doris, Selena, Catherine, and Marcelo. It's a real pleasure to have you guys on board and to contribute with your knowledge with our friends in Latin America. I cannot stress enough the importance of having these studies done for any airport. As you very well know, friends in Entrevistas, but for the benefit of our members in Latin America, any self-respecting airport in the US, Canada, or Europe has an economic impact study done, because that forms the main dialogue with society. Okay, I cannot stress enough the importance of doing that also in Latin America. I mean, some airports have done it, and they use it very wisely. And I would really stress, I would really recommend that they actually consider doing this, because, as I say, this is the starting point in that dialogue with society, with the government. You need to have that credibility, and that credibility is only coming from doing studies of this sort. Yes, of course, you will be criticized that the numbers look too good, or whatever, or the multiplication factor. Anyway, that is normal with all these studies, but a study needs to be done, because, as I say, that constitutes the platform where a serious dialogue can take place. So thank you very much. I just want to say this. I want to say hello to Marcelo, who is a very good friend and who's really collaborating very, very strongly with us. And please go ahead with the questions. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you, Rafael. So thank you to our speakers today and to all of your participation. Just remember that you could send your questions through info@aci-lac-lac.aero. So we're starting the Q&A session. We have the first question. How do we convince non-aviation stakeholders to recognize the value of an airport's economic impact?
I think just on the heels of Rafael's comments, I think that just that in itself, it is a beginning point, and there may be some skepticism around what the results look like, but I think that with respect to the work of InterVistas, we really pride ourselves in terms of the methodology and being very clear about the approach, and oftentimes we may also really just in terms of helping airports determine what the boundary is and what is computed and what's conveyed. I think that those are very important things, and to be able to just do that in a very clear and concise way. I don't know, passing over to Selena if you have any other follow-up comments as well.
Sure, thank you, Doris. And as Doris mentioned, it's all about communicating that by telling the story. Getting the local context. I think it helps a lot when people or readers can relate to the story. And as I said as well, economic impact studies are about the people. It's the jobs that are employed, that's supported. So knowing the local context and being able to tell a story that resonates with the audience definitely helps. And seeing that connection of aviation to industries, to passengers and tourists. So that storytelling definitely helps.
And maybe just a quick comment, and based on my experience at Qatar Airways before, where we used to commission this type of studies, it's very important for your airport to get engaged, not only at the level of your corporate affairs department or finance or the main stakeholders who are interested about these numbers, but also engage with whoever is running your communications and your marketing as well, because these people will share and will shape the level of messaging that is required to for you to advance your objectives.
Yeah, thank you, Marcelo. We have another question for Doris. What do you think about the impact of new public transportation services to airports in parking income?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And I mean, when we're talking about rail linkages or increased like transit options and things like that to airports, there's a lot of benefits to that. If we think about, from a sustainability climate aspects, right? Getting cars off the road. But of course, at the same time, yes, if you have more people who are taking other modes of transportation, and that's more mass transportation, yeah, there would be an impact, I suppose, on, potential parking income at airports and whatnot. But that is a trend that we're seeing, in a number of different geographies where just to reduce congestion and whatnot to and from airports, mass transit is where things are going, but there are a number of other benefits that go along with that. But from the airport's perspective, if it is a way to ease the transportation sort of flow of things, it's beneficial, I would say. And if there is a more of a negative impact on parking income, there are opportunities to develop other services or other ways to maybe cover some of that potential loss in parking income. But I would think that from a sustainability perspective, having that those increased linkages are really the way forward.
Okay, thank you. Here we have another question. It says, how can airports decide which type of economic impact study fits their situation? Can you tell us a bit about your experience in advising clients on this question?
Sorry, things just cut out for me a little bit. Could you repeat the question, or maybe Selena, if you would like to go ahead?
Sure. I think the question was more on what the different, how to choose the different types. I know towards the end of Doris's presentation there, she talked about the different types of macroeconomic impact study or microeconomic impact study. And there's a catalytic impact study that talks about the wider economic benefits as well. So I think the first step is, as Doris has said, is really to assess the problem and the question that needs to be addressed. I mean, these different studies look at things in different scopes as well. And so I'll pass it back to Doris to continue with that discussion.
Thanks so much, Selena. Yeah, so I think that the key aspect there really is to, to understand, well, what is the question that needs to be answered? And maybe sometimes there isn't a question. Maybe the conducting an economic impact study is just part of, the public relations, government relations plan, and some analyses that, would supplement, those different areas. But really depends on if there is let's say, for example, I'll use the government funding application as an example. So we've done work for a number of clients where they are seeking government funding for some infrastructure development. Some of it's cargo related, some might be passenger services related, and in those particular aspects, really to be able to convey, okay, if this, let's say, if the cargo infrastructure is built, what does that mean with respect to economic impact? And we would be able to, what we would do there was forecast and develop the potential employment impacts, for example, if let's say the cargo warehouse is built, and what that would mean for the general economy. So that would be a very specific analysis that would be conducted for that particular purpose.
Okay, thank you, Doris. We have another question here. It says, do you think studies on impact should be mandatory to decision making in airports?
I think the word mandatory is I'm not I think that what we would suggest actually is conducting an economic impact is very helpful and supportive. In the case where such analysis would be mandatory, actually would be in like a government funding application, for example. We've done some work in Canada where the funding program requires an economic impact, but also supplemented with a cost benefit analysis as well on the specific area of interest. So if we were talking mandatory, those specific areas would be, the analysis would need to be done. Otherwise, the application would be deemed, incomplete. So it would be in the best interest, for the airport to convey that. But I think generally speaking as well, what we've seen with the pandemic is that a number of our clients, and just not only our clients, but with the pandemic over the last couple of years and the industries that are being affected and impacted, one way to actually convey the importance is through an economic impact study. And this is not just aviation. I mean, we've seen this in a number of other sectors as well, especially when, there are calls for, government support and government funding. And it really is how to sort of, get the attention of I think in that particular case of government, and to really convey the importance of and the economic benefits of a particular sector. So, there were a number of, I think, industries, and we've seen some clients who did not have that type of information available to them. So it presented some challenges in terms of conveying, their story forward.
And maybe just a small point to add to what Doris was saying. Again, referring back to my experience before working for a global airline, where we had to interact with decision makers all over the world. This type of studies were extremely useful when we were to get involved with what I would call as non-aviation stakeholders. So people who have a very general knowledge of the industry but don't really understand it. And this might be at different levels of ministries, but also other industries as well. So we go back to the question of, should it be mandatory? It's probably not mandatory, but it's definitely useful internally to understand the value of your airport, to create awareness of what your economic activities are benefiting or kind of benefits you are providing to your community, to your region. But also whenever you interact with those non-aviation stakeholders, having those numbers handy goes really a long way.
Okay, so that's all the questions we have. I want to thank you, you all for today's webinar. And if you have any more questions, please send it to the email in the slide, and we will follow up on it with the speakers. So have a great day, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much to everyone. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.